St. John of the Cross once wrote a little note to someone. What does it profit you to give God one thing if he asks of you another? Consider what it is God wants and then do it. You will, as a result, better satisfy your heart than with that toward which you yourself are inclined. How often do we try to practice virtue to make God or others see us? Jesus says in the Gospel, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. John of the Cross interprets this as meaning, it is good to give something to God, symbolized by your right hand, but that should have nothing to do with whether or not you enjoy it, symbolized by your left hand. Instead of bulldozing forward with hands full of our own stubborn will, we should pray and seek counsel from other people to learn God's will, and then do it wholeheartedly. If our hands are full with all our efforts to do our own will, then we won't be able to take up our cross and follow Christ. It's like when an aunt or uncle comes to visit their niece or nephew, and they tell them to close their eyes and hold out their hands. Jesus assures his disciples again in the Gospel what kind of person would hand that child a snake or a scorpion. In the same way, if we have faith that God really is a loving Father, then we can close our eyes and hold out our hands. We can let Jesus take our hand and lead us wherever he goes because we trust that he will bring us somewhere better than we could ever find on our own. The season of Lent didn't begin as a self-improvement program for the early Christians. It began as a period of preparation for the catechumens who were to be baptized on Easter. Before receiving new life as children of God, they had to strip themselves and put on Christ. They did this literally when they were baptized. They took off their old worldly clothes before descending into the water and put on a new white garment when they came out. They were really reborn. They became innocent little children of God. Other Christians immediately saw how good this period of preparation was, and so all Christians started to join the catechumens to remember what it means to be a child of God. This is the path Jesus took in his own life on earth, being led by his Father's will. At every moment, he sought to do what he knew was the Father's will. For that reason, his sacrifice on the cross was not so much the sacrifice of his body nailed to the cross as it was his loving obedience to the Father. The purpose of the season of Lent is to become like Christ, to learn the Father's will, and to make a sacrifice of obedience. This means becoming vulnerable before the God who sees me and loves me, like a baby is naked before his mother when he's born. A baby isn't born holding 1,000,000 of its own projects already in its hands. It's born with empty hands, grasping to find its mother. In Lent, we really abandon ourselves in confidence to God's infinite love for us through renewed prayer, through acts of penance, and through love of him and of our neighbor. And besides, life goes on after the crucifixion. Easter has to come. Otherwise, in St. Paul's words, we Christians are the most pitiable of all, because we've staked all our hope on Easter. Lent and Easter are inseparable, just as there's no resurrection without first the stations of the cross. When Jesus appears to his apostles on Easter, how does he prove that it is he himself standing in front of them? He shows them the marks of his passion. God glorifies us in our wounds, not because God delights in suffering, but because he can redeem even the most wounded parts of us. But first we have to suffer being wounded. We have to be reduced to nothing in order to become everything God wanted us to be when he made us his own child at baptism. St. John of the Cross says that in baptism, God gives everything that he wants to give. But the whole process of appropriating, taking in, and living up to that grace is normally very slow, like a father walking alongside his child, little by little, poco a poco. At baptism, we receive everything at God's pace. The rest of our life is spent learning to live up to his gift, walking at the soul's pace. Lent is our opportunity to unpack and live up to that grace we received at baptism. God's desire is that we become like himself, like Christ who became obedient even unto death. Or in St. John of the Cross's words, God's desire is that we become God by participation in him. Lastly, the double art piece of Lent and Easter, with its hinge solidly nailed in the Paschal Triduum, begins with Ash Wednesday and ends with Pentecost. It begins with ashes and ends with fire. This is the reverse of how things normally work, but in order to make God's life our own, our normal ways of thinking have to be turned upside down. By ourselves we are dust, and to dust we shall return. When we pass through the way of the cross, God also fulfills his promise of resurrection, and life enters into these dry bones. So this Lent, we travel little by little, poco a poco, toward the cross through our prayer, penance, and acts of love. I invite you, commit yourself to taking that next step this week, whether that's a kind word to someone you'd rather avoid or an extra 5 minutes of prayer to learn the way of love from the crucified one. Commit to searching out God's will this week and doing it with a renewed fire of love. Let's close with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we ask you for the gift of obedience this Lent, obedience to your will. We ask you that we be able to search out your own will as Jesus followed your will throughout all his life, and to be crucified with him, so that we can come to the resurrection with him, to approach you with empty hands so that you can fill them with whatever you want to fill them with. And we make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.